I'm Dr. Lora Shahine. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about what is happening with Roe v. Wade. I'm Dr. Lora Shahine. I'm a double board certified obstetrician gynecologist and reproductive endocrinologist who's been helping people build families for over 15 years. And during my training and during my practice, abortion rights have been protected at a federal level, and this is under threat. So in this video, I want you to understand what's happened. I want you to understand how we got here. And I want you to understand what it means and what you can do. So first of all, what is happening? It is the first week of May in 2022, and the media has just blown up with Roe v. Wade is overturned, and Supreme Court has voted to overturn Roe v. Wade. And I want you to understand what this means. So on May 2nd, Politico released a leaked document from the Supreme Court. This is not a document that was meant to be shared with the public. It was definitely leaked. And it is a draft of a majority opinion in a case that the Supreme Court is currently deliberating. So this is not a final document. This is not a decision that's been made. But if this really does go through, then Roe v. Wade could be overturned and abortion rights as we know them today and the way they've been for over 50 years could be gone. So this document is again, a leaked document. It's not supposed to be shared with the public. It's considered a first draft of an opinion piece for a case that the Supreme Court is currently deliberating. The case is Dobbs versus the state of Mississippi. And it's a case that the Supreme Court listened to deliberations back in December 2021. They've taken time to think about it, had initial, discussions and initial kind of understanding of which way the justices will probably vote in the case. And the majority of the justices seem to have decided to vote for Mississippi in this case. And this is an opinion piece kind of explaining how the justices came to this decision to support Mississippi in the case. The case Dobbs versus the state of Mississippi is an effort to ban abortions after 15 weeks gestation in the state of Mississippi. What's important about it is Roe v. Wade protects the rights of abortions up until viability, and that can be hotly debated, but viability basically means that the baby would be able to live outside of the uterus after delivery. And in general, that's considered to be about 23 weeks gestation. So banning abortion after 15 weeks gestation by this state is already going against Roe v. Wade. But some states have been able to limit abortions. You know about the heartbeat laws in Texas, not doing abortions after a heartbeat is seen, and that can usually happen at about 6.5 weeks. But what is also important to understand about this Dobbs versus the state of Mississippi is that they also argue that not only for the ban of abortions after the 15th week of gestation, but also to overturn Roe v. Wade, basically stating that this proclamation by the Supreme Court in 1973 that protected abortion rights on a federal level is unconstitutional in the beginning. It actually has no justification for being implemented in 1973. And therefore, not only should the Supreme Court agree with the state of Mississippi and ban abortions after 15 weeks, but they should also abolish Roe v. Wade, just overturn that decision that a different court, the court that was in session in 1973, passed. So how did we get here? Well, in 1973, when Roe v. Wade was passed, it actually was not very controversial. Most states had legalized abortion. It was just that Texas was one of the states that had not yet. And this is a way on a federal level to support abortion rights for all citizens of the United States. It was decided for the majority. 7 justices voted for it and 2 against. Definitely the majority of the court supported it. It's interesting, the justice who wrote the majority opinion for Roe v. Wade actually had a lot of experience working with physicians. He used to be a lawyer for the doctors of the Mayo Clinic. And in his majority opinion, he was talking about this is really a privacy issue, and it's a freedom issue for women to have the ability to make medical decisions between themselves and their doctor. And it was actually very medical focused, the majority opinion. He concluded the decision to terminate a pregnancy lies between the woman and her doctor, not the government. After the ruling, 46 states actually did have to amend their laws in order to comply with Roe v. Wade. And that started more of a movement and kind of an understanding, and it's just blossomed over time, of course. And cases are constantly coming in front of the Supreme Court to limit access to abortion, not completely terminate access because Roe v. Wade is upheld, but it's just sort of been chipped away and made more and more difficult to obtain an abortion over time. But what is different about this is that this particular document that was leaked in the first week of May of 2022 can actively overturn Roe v. Wade. And in that document, Justice Alito is basically saying abortion is not mentioned in the Constitution. There's no automatic constitutional right to have an abortion. And he says the decision to uphold Roe v. Wade in 1973 was based on, providing liberty and privacy, and that just doesn't hold up for abortion rights. So again, this is a draft of a document. Roe v. Wade has not been overturned, but you can surmise from reading the document that 5 of the justices are going to vote to uphold the Mississippi ban on 15 weeks or more gestation abortions and vote in the same decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. The legal logic for overturning Roe v. Wade outlined by Justice Alito in his document that was leaked is basically that abortion rights are not based in the Constitution, that Roe v. Wade in and of itself in 1973 was egregious and should have never been passed. That's what he's arguing. People who are pro Roe v. Wade really cite the 14th Amendment due process clause, in which states may not deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. It's really relying on this concept of liberty, that women should have the freedom to be able to decide on abortion rights and medical procedures themselves under the privacy of a doctor-patient relationship. So you might be asking, how can this happen? Like, isn't Roe v. Wade law? Like, how can legislation go backwards? It can happen because abortion rights are not actually law or set in stone. It's a Supreme Court decision that's been upheld for over 50 years. And there are times where Supreme Court decisions have been overturned. It's hard to overturn previous decisions by previous courts. This is considered going against precedent, and a very I'm not a lawyer. I'm doing the best I can to try to explain what I've learned in this process. But precedent is, kind of very strong when you're trying to argue laws and sort of say, okay, previous judges have thought about this, they've made a ruling, and I'm going to say that you should make a similar ruling in the case that's in front of you now based on precedent. But there are times where we have made new rulings and gone against previous court precedents. But in every other instance that we've done that, it's in order to expand rights and liberties. So a great example is Brown versus the Board of Education. So there was Supreme Court ruling saying that you could have segregation in schools as long as they're equal learning opportunities. But Brown versus the Board of Education went back on that previous ruling in order to expand and protect education for anyone, regardless of race. Another example are the multiple anti-gay or same-sex marriage rulings from the Supreme Court that were overturned in order to support gay marriage and same-sex marriage. These are examples of widening freedoms and protecting citizens. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, it will be the first time that a Supreme Court ruling has been overturned in order to restrict freedom and restrict choice. And that is very concerning. So why does this matter? So this hasn't been decided yet, but it could be a decision and published as soon as June 2022. And there are states that have trigger laws in place so that if Roe v. Wade were ever overturned, automatically they would have restrictions on abortion. This is bigger than abortion rights. This is also the opportunity of limiting a lot of reproductive rights based on how you define an embryo. We could be looking at restrictions of IUDs, of other birth control methods, and then in my own practice, helping people build families, we could be limiting access to IVF and assisted reproduction to help people build families. And 2% of babies born in the United States are born from assisted reproduction. That is so many families that would be affected if new laws go into effect, these personhood laws that are giving embryos rights before they're even transferred. We might not be able to freeze embryos in the future. We might have to transfer more embryos than really is quite honestly safe. We have come so far with the field of in vitro fertilization and assisted reproduction, where we have such high success rates with a single embryo transfer that we do not have to risk the pregnancy or the mom's health by transferring too many embryos. And just down the road, these options could be taken away. That is what is happening. It is really serious. I never thought that I would see this in my lifetime. I knew that this was a possibility. Of course, I'm paying attention, but just the fact that it's really happening, it's taking me a while to process. So what can you do? You can use your voice. You can reach out to your legislatures at a city level, at a state level, at the federal level. Let your representatives know how you feel and use your voice. There are certain institutions and organizations that you could support financially. It could be Planned Parenthood, it could be the ACLU. Find the group that you want to support, or just use your voice. The majority of citizens in the United States, up to 80% of people, support access to abortion. Abortion has a horrible term. It's been so polarizing. Language is important. It's become so political, and it is just so not black and white. So to recap, this week on May 2nd, 2022, there was a leaked document from the Supreme Court, and draft of majority opinion, which is arguing for the state of Mississippi in order to restrict abortions after 15 weeks gestation. But in addition to ruling on that particular case, it's arguing for overturning Roe v. Wade. This could happen as soon as June 2022. There's still time to use your voice. If this happens, immediate laws could go into effect in 11 states, but up to 26 states are ready to really start restricting access to abortion. And there can be downstream effects as far as limiting access to birth control, limiting access to IVF, and use of frozen embryos. This is so much bigger than abortion rights. You can't put this decision into a little box and say you are pro-life and that you are protecting unborn children. I understand, and in rare circumstances, that is a part of this, but really what this is anti-choice and taking away privacy and decisions that should be made on a medical level between a doctor and a patient. And if we take this away, the downstream effect and what else could we take away, and setting this precedent of the Supreme Court going back on decisions that are restricting access to medical care, that concerns me. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned something today. Like this video if you did, comment with questions that you have, subscribe to this channel, and stick around for more learning.